In May 1945, the guns finally fell silent across Europe. Adolf Hitler was dead, the Nazi regime had collapsed, and Germany lay in ruins. Cities like Berlin and Dresden were reduced to rubble, millions were displaced, and hunger was everywhere. The world celebrated the end of the war, but for the German people, this was not just an end, it was also a beginning. The question was clear: how could a nation that had endured 12 years of dictatorship and committed unimaginable crimes transform itself into a democracy? Historians often refer to this moment as a 0 hour, a chance for a radical new start. But could an entire society truly erase its past overnight? This was the challenge facing both the German people and the Allied powers who now occupied the country. Germany's future would be shaped in the shadow of its darkest chapter. By early May 1945, the Red Army had stormed into Berlin, and on April 30th, Adolf Hitler took his own life in his bunker. Just days later, on May 7th, the German Wehrmacht signed an unconditional surrender. After almost 6 years of war, more than 60 million people had been killed worldwide. Among the dead were 6 million European Jews, murdered in the Holocaust, along with Roma and Sinti, Soviet prisoners of war, people with disabilities, and countless others persecuted by the Nazis. Inside Germany, destruction and despair reigned. Cities like Cologne and Dresden were reduced to ashes, infrastructure lay in ruins, and most industries had ground to a halt. Millions were displaced, with around 12 million ethnic Germans arriving as refugees or expellees. Food shortages left families struggling for survival, while the Reichsmark had lost its value, fueling a thriving black market. Transportation was paralyzed, bridges destroyed, and basic necessities like water, gas, and electricity were scarce. Amidst hunger, chaos, and hopelessness, Germans faced the reality of their country's collapse, not only of a government but of an entire society. This was the broken foundation upon which a new Germany would have to be built. In the aftermath of surrender, a new phrase emerged: 0 hour. It symbolized the idea of wiping the slate clean, starting fresh after the collapse of Nazi rule. Germany, devastated and leaderless, seemed poised for a radical rebirth. But was such a clean break ever truly possible? In reality, society cannot reset overnight. Until May 7, 1945, many Germans still believed in Hitler and the Nazi system. By May 8, they were suddenly expected to embrace something entirely different: democracy. The notion of a total reset was more wishful thinking than reality. For many, 0 hour became less about accountability and more about forgetting. It offered a convenient way to bury guilt, evade responsibility, and avoid confronting complicity in Nazi crimes. This reluctance to face the past raised crucial questions: can a new society rise without reckoning with what came before? The Allies believed not. To them, rebuilding Germany meant more than physical reconstruction. It required reshaping values, teaching democracy, and forcing a confrontation with history. 0 hour wasn't a magical reset button, but rather the difficult beginning of a long and painful transformation. After Germany's surrender, the victorious Allies took control of the defeated nation. The country was divided into 4 occupation zones, each administered by the United States, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and later, France. At the Potsdam Conference in July 1945, the Allies agreed on guiding principles for Germany's future: denazification, democratization, and demilitarization. Their task was not only to dismantle the Nazi state but also to ensure that Germany would never again threaten world peace. The Allies recognized that democracy could not simply be imposed, it had to be learned. For Germans who had lived under dictatorship for 12 years, obedience had replaced independent thought. The challenge was to shift this mindset, from blind loyalty to critical questioning, from dictatorship to democratic participation. Yet, the German population was weary and often reluctant. Many wanted to draw a line under the past, to escape guilt and move forward without reflection. The Allies, however, were determined. Confronting the horrors of Nazism was essential. Through education, cultural reforms, and political restructuring, they aimed to reshape Germany's identity. In their eyes, rebuilding wasn't just about reconstructing cities, but about reconstructing minds. One of the Allies' most urgent goals was re-education. They believed Germans had to be confronted directly with the crimes committed under Hitler. To achieve this, they organized visits to former concentration camps. In Weimar, for example, citizens were forced to walk through the liberated Buchenwald camp, seeing firsthand the atrocities committed in their name. In cinemas, people watched the film The Death Mills, a harrowing 20-minute documentary exposing mass graves and the industrial scale of Nazi brutality. These efforts were meant to shock the population into recognizing the consequences of dictatorship. Beyond confronting the past, reforms were carried out in schools, universities, and media. New textbooks were introduced, public broadcasting was reorganized, and newspapers like the Süddeutsche Zeitung were established under Allied supervision but run by German journalists. The goal was to nurture critical thinking and democratic values. The Nuremberg Trials also served as a powerful tool of re-education. 21 leading Nazi officials, including Göring and Hess, faced justice, and the German public could no longer deny the scale of the crimes. While reactions were mixed, the trials marked a turning point, showing that accountability, truth, and justice would be the foundation of a new Germany. After 1945, the Allies sought to purge Nazi influence from German society. Around 8.5 million people had been Nazi Party members, making a full break nearly impossible. In the US zone, denazification became bureaucratic, lengthy questionnaires sorted people into categories, yet most were exonerated and quietly reintegrated. By contrast, the Soviets dismissed entire groups of officials, replacing them with loyal but inexperienced cadres. While this seemed thorough, it laid the groundwork for new authoritarianism. Denazification revealed a key dilemma. How could a nation so deeply entangled with dictatorship truly cleanse itself while still ensuring a functional society? As the Cold War deepened, Germany split into two very different states. In the East, the Soviet Union dismantled industries for reparations and imposed a socialist system. The result was a controlled economy and authoritarian rule under the German Democratic Republic, GDR. In the West, however, the Marshall Plan fueled economic recovery, and democratic institutions began to thrive. Civil society, free media, and judicial independence took root. While East Germans faced repression and shortages, West Germans experienced prosperity and growing political freedoms. The division created two contrasting Germanys, one under communist control, the other embracing liberal democracy. The idea of a true zero-hour proved illusory. Change did not happen overnight. Instead, it required generations of effort, confronting the Nazi past and building trust in new institutions. In West Germany, prosperity and an active civil society strengthened democracy, while in the East, authoritarian socialism stifled freedoms. The central lesson is clear: democracy cannot simply be imposed, it must be nurtured, protected, and continually renewed. Germany's experience shows that confronting history honestly is essential to preventing tyranny from returning and safeguarding democratic values for the future. The lessons remain vital today: freedom must never be taken for granted, and the past must always be remembered. If you found this story of Germany's path to democracy insightful, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more history explained simply and clearly.